And welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I am your host, Buckeye Boggs, aka the Podfather. That sexy gentleman to my left, well, that's the wild man, Chris Wilds. He is the man of many dreams. And Chris, I don't know about you, but I've been dreaming about one Cotton Bowl this week. I am so excited for this game. I am excited to see if Ohio State can keep this wild momentum that they've got going. Tennessee, Oregon, can they make it 3 for 3, take down the Texas Longhorns? A lot of people think Texas is going to present some different things for Ohio State, but Texas is an interesting case study on a team that has been good but not great. They have shown flashes at times, but yet they have done some things where you're kind of just like, you know. So this could be a very interesting game, and I'm excited. I'm confident, but I'm not overly confident. I'm not like sitting here thinking we're gonna blow these guys out. We're gonna blow their doors off. But that's not off the table either. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of good going into this game, man.
Well, Eric, the roasting the ducks is over, man.
Yeah,
We've had our duck. Now it's
yeah.
time to throw some bevo steaks on the grill.
There you go. And I tell you, I like steaks. That's my favorite food, man. So
I'm telling you, this is a team. You're right. Texas is interesting. I think is a good way to put it because they may have underachieved more than any other team in football this year. I mean, some might say with that loss to Michigan that Ohio State was right there,
hmm
but Texas came in here. I mean, guns blazing. They were supposedly, going to be the team this year, and Georgia just owned them in SEC play.
Yeah, 0 and
So
2 against the Dogs. And we were talking about how it's hard to beat a team 2 times in a row. Speaking about Ohio
yeah,
State versus Penn State, but maybe there's some of that going on with that. But yeah, man, I kind of feel, Chris, like this is going to be a game where if Ohio State can continue doing what they've been doing, I don't know. There's a whole lot Texas can do, and Texas is going to have to do something they haven't done all season. That's put it all together.
yeah, that's the big difference right now between this Texas team and Ohio State is the fact that Ohio State has built momentum after that Michigan loss, and you look at Texas post Georgia loss, and this is a team that barely made it past Arizona State, Eric. By all rights, they probably should have lost to Arizona State. So, can Sarkisian put it all together? I mean, let's face it, not one of my favorite people, but he has a very good offensive mind. But a lot of this is going to come down to can anybody stop right now what has been the hottest offense in all of college football?
Yeah, which is crazy to think
Fueled by
about.
one Jeremiah Smith. I don't know if you've seen him yet, but the homage T-shirt companies put out the "You've Just Been Smith" T-shirts.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
telling you, and that's the way Tennessee and Oregon both have to feel. They just got Smithed.
yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what Texas is going to do when it comes to that. And that's a question I have in the queue ready to ask one Gerald from the Longhorn Republic, who will be our special guest here in a little bit. You're going to want to make sure to hang around for that. I have some great questions for him. And Chris, he had some very insightful answers and was very open and honest with me about his team. And great conversation, great interview. You're definitely going to want to check that out. But Chris, without any further ado, it's time to get into our side of this preview. Let's rock and roll.
All right, so here it comes. This Friday night, little Friday night football this week. 7:30.
Football Friday night. Football Friday night.
Yeah, if you never do that again, that'd be okay. Uh, but yeah, Friday night on ESECPN, we've got the pride of the SEC, the Texas Longhorns, facing off against our Ohio State Buckeyes, and what should really just be Depending on which Texas team shows up, if we see the Ohio State we've seen the last couple weeks, I don't know that it matters who you put at quarterback. I don't care whether it's Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning. I don't care if it's Peyton Manning back here at quarterback. I don't know if anybody can score on this Ohio State defense consistently.
Well, I think Texas can score. Quinn Ewers is not exactly not a good quarterback. He's a good
No,
quarterback
he's
here.
very quality.
He's a former Buckeye, man. The thing with Arch Manning is, and again, I don't want to let all the information out because that's one of the questions I asked Gerald is how much are we going to see Manning and when we do, what will we expect?
Well, he's an
And he
athletic
kind of
guy there.
poo-pooed it. He kind of poo-poos it. He poo-poos it a little bit that Manning has not been exactly the same Manning that they saw in the regular season, and they're offensively they're more one-dimensional when that happens. They're riding and dying with Quinn Ewers here, man.
That scares me a lot less because if that's
Me
the
too.
case, you've got you know a guy in Arch Manning who can throw the ball and who is very athletic and can make some magic happen with his legs. And typically, those guys who can do something with their legs are where Ohio State has had trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Now that being said, they've done a pretty good job of containing Dylan Gabriel and
They do.
the kid from Tennessee the last couple weeks.
Now, that's not to say, and Gerald does mention this, that if Sark sees something on film where he thinks he can exploit it with Manning, he will. But the fact still remains, Quinn Ewers is one of the most winningest quarterbacks in Texas football history, and to take the football out of his hands kind of seems ill-advised at this time. So just an interesting note.
I
All right.
get that, but man, Eric, he's also seemed very pedestrian at times.
I think it depends on the defense
Yeah.
and what the defense is doing and how much pressure he's getting. He does not have the same wide receivers he's throwing to that we have at Ohio State, which,
Oh, not even close.
sorry, Quinn, you're the one who left. Um, Cotton Bowl history, Chris.
Yes.
First time we went to the Cotton Bowl was 1986. One Earl Bruce was head coach of that team. Went down to Dallas, Texas, and took down A&M
Mhm.
28-12. I was 5, so I don't really remember this. Do you remember this, Chris? Was it a good
I
good game?
do. Um,
You were a
yeah,
kiddo, weren't you?
I was, well, I mean, you're talking 86. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I remember them going. Um, I don't recall a lot about the game other than the fact that we won. That's
I've watched it on, YouTube,
yeah,
the highlights and things. That was back when they had the old netted jerseys. You remember the
yeah.
netted jerseys? 2017 was the next time we went, so it was, gosh, 30 years later we finally got back to Texas for a Cotton Bowl. That was the 24/7 drumming of USC. And then we all remember last year's trip to Arlington, Texas, a 14-3 loss to Missouri that Skeeter and our friends over at the Woods Water Mizzou podcast are still celebrating to this day. So this will be our fourth try down in the Cotton Bowl. We're 2-1. We like to make that 3-1. Now short history with Texas here, Chris, and I'm calling this the Trestle rivalry because all 3 games were in the 2000s when Jim
Yep.
Tressel was head coach. Of course, we played the home and home with Texas in 05 and 06. They came to Columbus, Ohio and beat us 25-22 in a game we had won and we should have won, to be quite
Yes.
honest. The very next year, we go down to Austin in 2006, and we kind of had our way with them, 24 to
Mhm.
7. We didn't play again until the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona in 2009, and that was a close 24-21 win for the Longhorns. So they hold a 2-1 lead over us in the 3 games that we've played. We'd like to even that score come Friday night. Interesting note, Chris, we played Texas to open the season and that game is at home in Columbus, Ohio. And then we return the favor the following year in 2026. We go to Austin to take on the Longhorns down in Texas. So one of these teams is going to lose this game and then turn right around and open the season next year. Could be could be 1-1, could go 0-2 two times in a row. So very interesting note
And,
with that.
and Eric, there's a very good chance that over this 2 year period, these two teams play 4 times. Very good chance.
Yeah.
Because Texas has quite a bit coming back next year. Ohio State's got a lot coming back next year. It would not be at all surprising to see these two face off in the playoffs again next year.
Wouldn't that be a nice little Big Ten SEC rivalry got going on there with that? That'd be kind of fun. Not gonna lie. All right, Chris, let's dive into some statistics and look at the tail of the tape.
Yeah, so if you look at this, the two teams offensively, very, very similar, although Ohio State holds, about a touchdown edge as far as points per game, scoring 41.1 to Texas's 34.3. Other than that, you look at the rushing yards per game, Ohio State only has about 3.5 more rushing yards at 169.1. Uh, Texas, slight edge in the passing game, passing for about 15 yards more per game at 278.5. The total yards per game, very similar as well, about a 12-yard difference. Texas, slight edge there. They're averaging exactly 444 yards per game to Ohio State's 432.5. Third down. Now, Eric, this is something that's improved drastically through the playoffs for Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Because that number was in the 30s as we were entering the playoffs. It's now at 46.5%. Uh, Texas, 43.3% converting those third downs. In red zone, I'll tell you, Ohio State still has the edge in red zone. 61 of 68 opportunities they've scored. Texas is no slouch, though, at 54 scores in 67 tries inside the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, two very, like you said, similar offensive teams. Defensively, you look at this, and Ohio State's surrendering about 19 points in a game. That's a number that's gone up significantly.
Yeah, well,
Um, a lot
you
of that has
have
to do with Oregon putting up some points.
21 and yeah.
Yeah. So they're at 19 points a game. Points per game for Texas, only 14.5 points per game. As far as the rushing goes, give the edge to Ohio State. They're only allowing 105 yards on the ground compared to 111 for Texas. Um, Passing yards per game, Texas actually has a slight edge there. But again, you look at the blowouts we've had here in the playoffs, and there's been a lot of air action going on.
Oregon threw the ball for 300 yards on us.
Yeah.
So
So Ohio State's given up about 195, almost 196 a game through the air, as opposed to 166 for Texas. Total yards per game, Texas has a slight advantage, 277.9 to Ohio State's 301. Third down percentage, very, very similar. Only about a 0.5% difference here. Slight edge to Texas at 31.5. 32.1 for Ohio State. In the red zone, though, again, very similar numbers. But Ohio State slight edge on percentage points. They get stingy, only allowing 29 conversions in 40 red zone attempts. Texas has allowed 25 and 37 red zone attempts.
it's
So, Eric,
basically the same number
these are,
almost.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
thing is Texas don't really let you in the red zone.
they do not.
However, you can hit them with some deep stuff. You can hit score on some big plays against Texas.
Here's the other thing, though. I would contend the way Ohio State's offense is clicking, Texas has seen nothing like this all season.
Yeah, that's that is a 100% true statement. And I was thinking about what is comparable here, right? And I thought about Georgia. I said, okay, let's think about Georgia. If Ohio State's the closest thing to Georgia, if Georgia's the closest thing to Ohio State that Texas is going to see, And then I got to thinking about that. I'm not so sure that that's a good comparison. And then I got to thinking about maybe Ohio State is like Vanderbilt, but like on steroids.
Yeah.
They didn't do too hot against Vanderbilt. They won, but it was a close game.
But it was a game that honestly Vanderbilt should have won.
And that's kind of and then the other thing that you have to take into account is how much better is this Texas team than last year's Texas team?
Yeah.
Are they? Is there a big difference?
I don't think so. I really don't.
Okay. Well, then let's look at this. Will Howard took a Kansas State team down to Texas and was 1 2-point conversion away from winning that game.
Yes.
No offense to our friends over at the Cocaine Willie podcast, but your Kansas State team from last year is nowhere near what this Ohio State team
No.
is right now. And the thing that I think people are coming to a realization on, Chris, is that if Ohio State continues to play their A game, nobody
Nobody's
is
even
going to stop
close.
this team.
You know what this reminds me of? If Ohio State continues to play this way, this is reminiscent of the juggernaut that was the 2020 Alabama team.
The
They're
team that
just that.
the team that Coach Sark was offensive coordinator for that
Yes.
blew our doors off in the national championship game. That was
This team
embarrassing.
has that
Yes,
kind of explosive potential
mojo.
offensively and that kind of shutdown ability defensively.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
And
what
just
you're looking
like
at.
that game, that Ohio State team had some good stuff. I mean, look at the offense they had, right?
Oh yeah,
Justin Fields was at quarterback, right?
yeah. You had Olave and
You had
Olave and
J.K.
Wilson and
Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins.
There was a lot of offensive weapons on that team. And defensively, even though they found a giant weakness and exploited it, you had Pete Warner on that team. You know, um, this was post Chase Young, so I'm
Yeah.
thinking Jonathan Cooper,
Yep.
right? Defensive end, I think it
Cooper,
was Jonathan
Garrett,
Cooper.
Haskell Garrett was on that line.
Haskell the Rascal Garrett was on that team. That's right. Although he didn't play in that game, if I recall,
So yeah,
right?
he had the flu or something, didn't he?
Well, we had a bunch of guys with COVID.
The COVID, that's what it was. Yeah, we had a bunch of the COVID guys. Yeah.
So that it really dampened that whole thing at the end because if you tested positive, you weren't allowed to play. It was crazy. But I digress. That's not going to be an issue. You're not going to see anybody get COVID this week going down on Friday, going down to Texas. Ohio State has already left for Texas. As if you're watching this on Wednesday when this drops, they're already down there now. They
Had to
are
get ahead of the snow.
Yeah, they are down there in Texas, ready to go. Now, one thing I asked Gerald about, and again, I don't want to expose everything that we're going to talk about here shortly because I want you all to continue to watch this video and watch that interview. But this is in the state of Texas. It's not a long drive to go from Austin to Dallas. It's a couple hours. They'll be
Yeah,
there.
it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours, isn't it?
And there's Texas fans all over that state.
Yeah.
This is going to be very much home field advantage as far as that's concerned for the Longhorns. Chris, any concern at all? Because Ohio State in practice we're pumping crowd noise into the Woody preparing for this. They're pretty sure this is going to be advantage Longhorns when it comes to the fans.
Yeah, and you know what? The funny thing is, this is kind of with this weather coming in, it's had almost an anti Tennessee effect, where everybody was trying to come up for the Tennessee game, from Tennessee. I've talked to several Ohio State fans who are selling their Cotton Bowl tickets because they don't want
Really?
to go down there and get stuck
Oh, geez.
because they're calling for, I believe, somewhere between 8 and 10 inches of snow on Friday down there or Thursday down there. So yeah, there was some weather concern. So I know several people who've actually sold their tickets.
Wow. I would be happily get stuck down in Texas if that were the case. But yeah, it's snowing in Texas. Can you believe that?
But not just a little bit of snow. They're talking full on snowstorm, man.
Yeah, that's wild to think
So
about.
that's
But
we need to
Buckeyes aren't
open
going to be worried about that.
we need to open the roof on Jerry World.
Yeah, there you go. Make it a home field advantage for us, man. Um, yeah, that would be wild, man. That would be wild. All right, we're gonna take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Gerald from the Longhorn Republic is gonna join me for an interview, and then Chris and I will be back. We're gonna give our final predictions. So hang tight, everybody. The OHIO podcast is brought to you by Mastermind. Mastermind specializes in 360-degree high-definition mobile video mapping, GIS integration, and traffic safety studies. Mastermind cares about traffic safety and keeping you safe on the roadway. Visit Mastermind at onlinemastermind.com. Congratulations on getting to the Big Cotton Bowl, man. This is going to be a lot of fun, brother.
It is. It is. It's I mean, this is what it's about, right? Like
Yeah,
getting these big brands, these blue bloods together, and having some of these historic matchups.
it is. It is. Of course, welcome back to the OHL podcast, everybody. And as you can see, we have a special guest, my good friend Gerald from the Longhorn Republic podcast. My man, tell everybody who you are, where you come from, brother.
Yeah. So my name is Gerald. Hi, nice to meet you, everybody. Grew up in Texas, big Texas fan. Went to University of Texas from 2004 to 2008. Kind of the golden years of Texas athletics, at least in the modern era. Got the tail end of the Vince Young run, the beginning of the Colt McCoy run, and so that was an absolute blast. Like I said, been a Texas fan since middle school. Basically, I moved to Texas when I was in fourth grade and kind of got into college football then. But journalism degree from Texas, and now I'm here. I host the Longhorn Republic podcast with one of my lifelong best friends, Kyle Carpenter, who I went to school with both in like high school, and we both went to Texas together. Stayed friends. We were texting one afternoon during a college football game. We're like, why don't we just do this as a thing? And so that was almost 8 years ago now, which is wild to say out loud.
Yeah, and you guys are some of the best, man, out there. With my work with the College Huddle, I listened and consumed more Texas podcasts than I would like to admit as a Buckeye fan. And you guys are fantastic. So we're happy to have you a part of the College Huddle, and we're happy to be heading down to the Lone Star State, man, the Cotton Bowl, the scene of the crime from last year's debacle, the end of the season, when Missouri beat us 14-3 in what is now in a lot of ways bowl games that aren't a part of the college football playoff, glorified exhibition games.
A little bit.
One could argue a precursor to spring football. That is kind of what and a lot of teams are looking at that now. And for Ohio State last year, that definitely seemed to be the case. And so now all of a sudden, now this one means a whole lot more. It counts a whole lot more. And there's a lot of storylines that we can address, and we will touch on some of those here, Gerald. But let's start here. Texas overall as a fan base, and I'm sure you've got your fingerprints on the fan base here, the pulse of the fan base. How are they feeling going into this game? Confidence level for the Longhorns going up against the Buckeyes, who a lot of people in the national media are now saying is the hottest team to go in this Final Four.
Yeah, I think there is this like sense of realism and I think pragmatism about it. If you had told a lot of Texas fans 5 years ago that in, January of 2025, we'd be the lone SEC representative in the college football playoff, we'd have all laughed you off the face of the planet. Right.
Right.
And so there's that sense of like, you know what, this is not earned money or house money, but like this has been a successful season by a whole lot of the metrics. Now, that being said, they're not chalking it up as an L either. I can't say that. It's going to be tough, and I think we're all going into this thing pretty eyes wide open. Ohio State has been on an absolute burner over these last couple of weeks, and so Texas has struggled, right? They gave up a ton of yardage to Clemson. Arizona State found a game plan that worked against them, and so we know that Texas is going to have to put together 4 really good quarters of football, and we haven't really seen a full game from them yet at that level. So I think there's, Texas fans are going into it with their eyes pretty wide open. Like, this is a winnable game, but Texas has to do some stuff that they haven't been able to do all year to do it.
Interesting. So my next question is kind of related to that, and that is, what is Stark? What outside of being the head coach, obviously, um, is his fingerprints all over this offense, or what's kind of the direction of Texas's offense? Because a lot of Ohio State fans have a lot of PTSD when he was the offensive coordinator for Alabama. The last time we were able to get to a national championship, we had a defensive coordinator who was inept. Let's just be honest, and we had a national championship offense, but the defense was not up to snuff, and we got embarrassed by Coach Stark. He schemed Alabama so far around us. It was embarrassing. Kind of give Ohio State fans who haven't followed Texas very closely an idea of what Stark's offense looks like and what his fingerprints look like on this offense, and maybe the direction of this Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning led offense of Texas.
Yeah, so it is honestly a game that is run a lot on the zone running scheme. He's going to run outside zone quite a bit. That's really where his bread and butter is as far as the running game goes. And that's leans into one of Texas's, I don't want to say advantages, but one of the best parts of the team is the offensive line unit, or has been the offensive line unit. So really leaning on, like, you've got at least two NFL tackles, maybe a guy in the interior that'll have a cup of coffee in the NFL, or at least go to a training camp every now and again. So, like, you've got a really solid offensive line. So leaning into that zone running scheme, you can go and look at the games, like Texas's win differentials this year, and the way the offense goes is the way the run game goes. Texas sucked running the ball against Georgia, sucked running the ball against Vandy. That was a close game. Sucked running the ball against Arizona State. And those are some really tight games. You look at the games where they blew teams out, they're putting up 225 rushing yards in those games. So, like, it is a run heavy offense. Now, Sark is not the type of guy to run just for the sake of saying that, oh, we had a 50-50 play calling split, right? His philosophy around balance is like, can I run the ball when I want to run the ball, or need to run the ball based on the game state? So whatever the defense is going to give him, that's really what he's going to lean into, but he does want to run the ball. He also is willing to use those like quick outs, those flats, the screens and all that, the wide receiver screens, the tunnel screens, to help soften the box a little bit and help create some of that almost pass to run situation. But he's also a guy who's going to take some deep shots, right? Especially with the quarterback that's got, or has had the arm strength that Quinn Ewers has. You saw some of it on display against Arizona State, that 4th and 13 dime he threw to the end zone. Like, he is going to dial up those shot plays. Sometimes he gets a little too cute. Like, I'll be honest with you, there's some times where I'm like, you were running the ball, you got 5 yards on the ground on the last play. Why are you taking a shot play on 2nd and 5, right? So those times where he gets a little too cute. But ultimately, he is going to try to run to set up the pass. A big fan of play action. Quinn Ewers is best on the play action. So that's really what the offense is going to look like, or at least will try to look like on Friday.
How much will Arch Manning be used in this game? Because I'll be honest, like, Ohio State's kryptonite defensively is stopping a mobile quarterback. And as a fan, I'm a little bit more worried about the legs of Manning, which is funny to say, the legs of Manning, than I am the arm of Ewers, but I digress. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing to say. Like, his dad was the wide receiver of the family, not the quarterback, right? So you have to keep that. You have to keep that in your back pocket. Also, apparently, mom was fast. That's always what Cooper says. Like, he got his speed from his mom. But I would be like, I'm of two minds of this, because as Texas has incorporated that Arch Manning set, it has been a very run heavy set, and teams have started to key off on that. Like, they know they're going to run the zone read, and that's what they're generally going to do with that. So when you become predictable with those sets, it loses some of its efficacy. Now, if Texas can create some of that space, and I would love to see them just like a little like Tebow style pop pass or something, just to make folks have to like account for that. I would love to see that. We haven't seen much of Arch, actually, I think, at all in the playoffs. Like, outside of an injury, I don't, like, just based on how Sark has been calling it for the last 2 games, I wouldn't anticipate seeing a ton of Arch. But that being said, he's been in the lab, he's been watching film, he's seen what running quarterbacks have done against Ohio State. So maybe he does get a little fun with it. I don't know.
Interesting. All right, let's flip it over to Ewers now. Obviously starts his career one season, graduates high school year early, comes to Columbus, collects a nice little NIL, wants to go back home. No one's blaming someone for that. Not everybody's cut to go all the way across country, especially when they're 17 years old. So,
Yeah.
there'll be some Ohio State fans who will heckle, but for the most part, your level-headed fans are understanding of that. Doesn't mean we don't want to win this game, get a
Oh,
little
yeah.
and sacked a little revenge here, but I watched the interview with Ewers. He's very polite. He doesn't say anything degrading. He doesn't give any bulletin board material to anybody. What's his motivation going into this football game, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for him, he has got an opportunity to create a legacy of his own at Texas. He grew up as a Texas fan. He wanted to go to the University of Texas, right? And there's Tom Herman conversation to be had in that. We Ohio State fans and Texas fans have some shared, I don't know, trauma maybe from Tom Herman. We can talk about
Yeah.
that later. But like, I think there's something to be said about like he grew up a Texas fan. He right now is kind of, if you look at modern quarterbacks at the University of Texas, like he's right at like number 3, like the Vince Young, Colt McCoy, and then Quinn Ewers. When you look at statistically, when you look at, he has the same number of conference championships as both of those guys, right? He's got an opportunity to kind of create and cement some of his legacy at the University of Texas and really be the guy who brought Texas, air quotes, back, right? What is bringing Texas back? Back-to-back college football playoff appearances, right? Back-to-back appearances in conference championships, right? One in the Big 12, one in the SEC. So I think for him, it really is an opportunity to like, this is going to be my legacy. If he can come out and lead Texas to a win, to an upset win. Texas is a 6-point underdog at this point, right? We're recording on Tuesday. Texas 6-point underdog at this point. It's like, if he can come out and come up with the win, acquit himself well, and really ultimately like set himself up for whatever's next, like it's going to be it would be a big win for him.
Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. And this is where I really want to talk to you, because I think
Yeah.
that the game's going to be won or lost here.
Mhm.
Because I think Texas scores against Ohio State's defense. Yes, I do. The question will be, can the defense stop this Ohio State offense, which is just, you look at what we did against Michigan and you look at then how we came out against Tennessee, and I don't know what was in the food that was being ate over there at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center in Columbus, Ohio, but they need to just keep feeding them the same meal, because this offense all of a sudden has become unstoppable. And despite the fact that we're down 2 starters on the offensive line, so let's start up front, because I think that has Texas has got a, can I use the word beefy defensive line?
I
I
think that's
mean,
fair.
they, to me, that is the unit that you're bringing into this game that can wreck this game, possibly.
I think it's not a bad descriptor. I think for multiple reasons, right? Going inside out, my new favorite tradition at Texas is figuring out which defensive tackle is going to make a big jump from their junior to their senior years. We're like 4 years deep into this now. And so like Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton are 2 guys that came in with a lot of potential, kind of high 4, 5-star kind of guys that were recruited to Texas, I think like mid Tom Herman era, and really hadn't lived up to it. And now they're looking at like guys who are going to hear their names called the NFL draft. They may not be first rounders, but they're going to definitely have an opportunity to play at the next level, which was something, if you asked me 12 months ago, I'm like, I just don't freaking know. And they are guys who can, they've got a great combination of size and athleticism. Both of those guys were recruited as kind of your out, like your run stopping defensive end, kind of what used to be called like the weak side defensive end in the recruiting services. And they've bulked up and kind of kept some of that athleticism, which creates a bit of a matchup issue. Texas is really deep there, right? You don't go out and replace top 2 round draft picks with just 2 guys. So Texas grabbed a bunch of bodies in the portal. You got a guy like Bill Norton who came in from Arizona State, who is just kind of a big beefy run eater in the middle. But Texas's big deal, I think, is the edges. And, Ohio State loves to run those counters, loves to kind of get defenses flowing in one direction. And so I think the game for me, Texas UTSA down in San Antonio, and a guy like David Benda, who's kind of come up in the program, they're two experienced guys. They're not the guys who are going to show up on the stat sheets as like your big sack time guys. They're not going to be the ones that blow up the stat sheet, but they do all that dirty work at the defensive end position that really makes a defense sound. They try to do a really good job of setting the edge, keep your outside arm free, force those runs back into the middle of the defense to where all the bodies are. It's like if those guys play up to their potential and really deliver on what they've done quite a bit throughout the year, like that's going to be Texas's biggest path to victories. Those edges, really keeping those counters, because I'm just going to say it, like the two running backs Ohio State brings to the game would start at 99% of the universities in the country, right? Those two guys are just top elite talent. So if they catch an edge, I would take them in a matchup with basically any defensive back that's ever existed. So like, can they set the edge, keep them inside, force them back towards where there's help and when there's bodies in the middle? And ultimately, that's going to be a winning proposition for Texas defensively.
How are you going to stop Jeremiah Smith?
I think that's the wrong question, right? Like, I don't know if there's a way to stop Jeremiah Smith, right? Maybe he gets food poisoning. I don't know. Ship him some bad seafood the night before. Call him an Uber Eats order and get some spoiled eggs or something. There's just not. Like, I think that's the wrong question, right? Like, how does the defense slow the offense down enough where the Texas offense can keep up? Like, that's the question that I've been asking, right? I think asking this defense asking anybody to shut down this Ohio State offense is a fool's errand, right? They've got 5 stars at every skill position. They've got a solid quarterback that can manage the offense and run the offense really well. So like, can Texas hold him to, I don't know, 100 yards instead of 150, right? Can Texas hold them to 1 touchdown instead of 2, right? You're not going to stop that guy, because if you do, then you've got Ibuka at the slot who's going to do something as well. So it's not even a pick your poison situation. It's like you're going to get poisoned no matter what. Which poison can you deal with so that the antidote can try to keep up with it? And that really is like my mindset going into the game.
Some of us are in the mindset that are kind of hoping that Stark says, let's stop him at all costs, because at that point, I think you're just leaving Will Howard open to just pick you apart, with everything else. And so it'll be really interesting to see what you guys do defensively there to try to create that. And of course, if you're getting pressure, that can alleviate a lot of it, right? Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see if you can get pressure with your defensive line, or does Will Howard get the ball out of his hands quickly, which has kind of been the start of, that's kind of how we've started games. Get it into their hands quick, let them do their thing, and then hit them deep, and then you've loosened everything up for the run game. That being said, what does Texas think of Will Howard?
I think Texas has a lot of respect for Will Howard. Really? Will Howard came to Austin last year and damn near won the game on his own, right? He had less of a starting cast in Manhattan than he did in Ohio. Like, that's really easy to say. But he came in and threw for like 350 yards and I think 3 or 4 touchdowns last year. Like, the dude is he's a good quarterback that has lit up Texas in the past, right? He was a 2-point conversion away from pulling off a massive upset in Austin. So I think this coaching staff and this team has a ton of respect. There's a lot of guys that were there and saw that game, were part of that game, and are thanking their lucky stars that I don't know why they went for the 2-point conversion, but Texas managed to blow it up and tackle him in the backfield. So, like, I think the Texas team, especially those guys, again, that watched him, were there on the sidelines or there, on the field against him, saw what he's capable of. He came in from Manhattan, came in Austin, and kind of stunted on the Texas defense last year. Now, the defense is better. There was some addition by subtraction, some guys transferring out, some guys transferring in, but ultimately, like, the core of this team saw that dude come in and ball out in Austin last year. So, like, I think there's got to be a ton of respect for him.
Yeah. What questions do you have for me? Do you have anything that's been burning in your mind about Ohio State that you might have going into this game?
I don't know if it's a question. It's just, it feels weird. Like, what was the switch that flipped? I think going into the playoffs, because ahead of the year, this is what everybody expected Ohio State to look like each and every week, and it wasn't necessarily consistent. It's like, what the heck happened? Is like the only way I can phrase that.
Yeah. So we have a working theory that we've been, as fans, been kind of working towards, and I think there's been some questions that have not been allowed to be asked by the media. I guess
Okay.
is a fair way to put that, about what took place inside the horseshoe against the team up north, as we like to call them.
Yeah.
And the going theory is that Ryan Day has this mental block where he feels like in order to gain respect from the Michigan side of the rivalry, he has to beat them playing their style of ball,
Mm.
which didn't work the last 3 years and it didn't work again this year.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people felt that if he wasn't calling the plays that game, he was audibling a lot of the play calls that Chip had made that
Mm.
game. And that the entire offensive game plan was of his doing. Now I can't confirm that, but if you just go watch the film, he's on the sideline like holding a play sheet the whole game. And he hadn't done that for a large portion of the season, and he hasn't really done that in the playoffs either. Sometimes he is holding a play sheet, but you can tell he's not really calling the plays. So that's kind of a going theory. And then attached to that is the idea of what took place following the game when they tried to plant their flag on our logo for a second time, and the seniors said, no, we're not going to let that happen, to the point where the police officers were macing people, and it was an ugly scene. That kind of like, we came back to beat them, to win a Big Ten title, to go to the college football playoff and compete for a chance to win a national championship. And all of that was taken away from this through a variety of reasons, including maybe a bad game plan by the head coaching staff. And they say, gosh darn it, we're danged if we're not going to get at least the last one. Because for a recruiting class that was the best recruiting class in the history of Ohio State to come away in 4 years with nothing, no wins against your rival, no Big Ten titles, no national championships. All they've won is a couple bowl games in that time period, which, as I stated at the beginning, is just glorified spring games now.
Yeah.
To finally, I think, realize this is it. This is the last chance we have. We might as well let it all hang out. And I think the coaching staff kind of sees that, and I think Ryan Day's like allowing Chip and Jim to just do their thing now and kind of stay out of the way. That's the going theories a little bit right now, at least from our side, and what we get kind of from the fan base. And of course, momentum is just a crazy thing. Once you pick it up, it can be wild. Now it can also change like that. And so there's although there's a ton of optimism going into this Cotton Bowl for this team, there is this cautiousness with it that says, hey, Texas is not Tennessee. We're not kidding ourselves here. They're also not Oregon. This is a better defense than what we had to play in the Rose Bowl. So I don't think anybody's thinking we're going to come out and jump out to a 21-0 or a 34-0 lead here. I don't think that's there might be a few crazies that kind of are thinking that, but like if we jump out to a 3-score lead again in the first half, I'll be shocked. I will literally be shocked if that happens. I don't think Texas defense is going to let that happen. They're too good for that. But to answer your question, that's kind of the going theory here, is that, the coaching staff kind of got out of the way a little bit, and the players said, we're not going out this way, and momentum is just kind of taken off.
There are folks that don't believe in momentum, but I think in college sports, like, it absolutely is a real thing. It's like it totally counts. I think my other question is about the Ohio State defense and like what Jim Knowles has done to kind of put them in position to be so effective. Like, when Ohio State hired him a few years ago, there were folks like kind of questioning, wondering nationally, like, they're taking Oklahoma State's defensive coordinator, and anybody that ever played a Jim Knowles defense was like, please freaking take him. Like, the Big 12 was throwing a party. First year was a little struggle, right? right? But they're now playing really, really well. So like, what has Jim Knowles done? I think he shifted from some of his 3 high safeties to going more of a traditional 2 high safety look. But like, what has he done to put these guys in position to be as effective as they have been?
Yeah, and you really hit the nail on the head with the safeties, because the safeties are all interchangeable and they can all. I mean, he moves them around in this defense, and sometimes I almost think they're just playing backyard ball. Like Caleb Downs all of a sudden will be on the line of scrimmage, and you're like, wait a second, wasn't he supposed to be the single high safety? Yeah, he just read the play and was down there on the line of scrimmage before everybody else. Lathan Ransom, same thing. Lathan Ransom has a lot of freedom in this defense to kind of move around, especially if we're in zone. He can kind of attack the run. But he can also cover really, really well. And he's next to Caleb Downs, the best tackler on this team. But to be from the beginning of the season to now, the greatest improvement has been at the linebacker position. You moved Sonny Styles from safety last year into the linebacker position, 5-star recruit. His daddy was Lorenzo Styles Jr., played in the NFL. So he's got the pedigree to be a linebacker, but he played safety in high school, started out as a safety, and then they realized, we have a ton of good safeties. We don't have a ton of good linebackers because they're all in the NFL now. We're going to need somebody. So they move him down, and his growth from the beginning of the season to now has just been crazy. He was out of position a lot to start the year off. He's not anymore. He's in position. He's making plays. He's solid. Can from time to time he be kind of confused by some pre-snap eye candy? Yeah, he can. But he's learning and he's a student of the game, and the thing that Jim Knowles says about him is he doesn't make the same mistake twice.
Mm.
Which tells you he's got a football IQ that is really good. Outside of that, our other linebacker is really is playing really well, leading the team in tackles. Has cracked a couple helmets, as Tennessee found out the hard way. When it gets cold, helmets will crack. Yeah, so he's playing incredibly well, and of course you got Jack Sawyer and JT Tumulao on the ends, who 5-star guys coming out of high school who are finally playing that way now. And they just dominated the last 2 games. They couldn't be blocked. And so it allows Knowles a lot of freedom as a play caller to get creative when he knows I can get home with 4.
Yeah.
So I don't have to dial up any exotic blitzes. I can just let my safeties kind of roam and play free. The corners are playing well. The last 2 games we've had ACC refs, and they have kept the hankies in the pockets. They are letting these guys play. We were complaining like crazy because Oregon was literally holding every play, but they also weren't calling pass interferences. And for Davison Igbinosun, that is a godsend. You know that meme where that guy kind of coming around the tree and he's doing this?
Yeah.
That's David Igbinosun when he sees ACC refs, because he's so handsy as a cornerback. And so that also helps out a lot too. And so Denzel Burke on the other side, he's playing phenomenally well. Oregon, who toasted him in the first go around in Eugene, this time he was absolutely over on top of everything. They only went his way one time. It was an incomplete pass because he was just, there was no one open there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been, what's been going on here with this defense is when the 4 guys up front are able to get home, Knowles can just kind of be a little bit more creative on the backside with things and play a little bit more, loose and kind of let it all hang out back there. And especially with the linebackers playing the way they are in the middle of this defense, just cleaning up everything. No one's been able to run the ball. And that's kind of been the thing here is if you can run on us, it opens up a lot of stuff, but no one's been able to run on this defense. They literally go in here saying we're going to stop the run first. So for you to say about your offense that it's important that you guys establish the run in this game, I think that is critical in this football game.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it is part of the DNA that Sark wants to bring to the table, and I think it's gonna be. I mean, when you look at the two of the best units, like the Texas offensive line and this Ohio State defensive line, that's good on good. I'm excited to watch it. I love watching the trenches. I play, you know, when I played in the trenches. It is my favorite thing to watch, so I'm excited
Yeah.
for it.
One last question. This being in Dallas, Texas, a little bit of a home state advantage here. What is your feeling as far as the ratio for Texas fans going into this thing?
Yeah, so from what I've seen, it's going to be pretty significant, especially with all the weather challenges. I think that'll probably also help Texas fans outnumber Ohio State fans. There was a weird thing that happened with Texas fans for the last game. They're like, Arizona State's a pushover. We're just going to save our money. We've already been to Atlanta once. We're just going to buy tickets for the next round and be okay with it. And then, like in the fourth quarter, they're like all kind of crapping themselves because maybe they just were out a ticket. So Texas fans have been pretty prepared for this game. They go to Dallas pretty regularly, at least once a year, the fans that are traveling. So I think they're going to show up pretty strong. Again, those folks that decided not to go to the last round, going to Atlanta twice in a month is pretty expensive. So like having the SEC championship game and a bowl game there is a daunting challenge financially, especially for fans that like to travel. So it's going to be, there are going to be a lot of them out there, and it's going to be a lot of them out there. And again, I think with the travel issues, the snow that's coming in and kind of keeping folks from getting out there, it's a little bit easier to travel in state when it's snowing, elsewhere than it is to fly. So I imagine and hope that Texas fans are showing out in numbers.
There you go. You don't have to, but do you have a prediction? Would you like to throw one out there?
I try to be a pragmatist about this. Like, I'm a Texas fan through and through. All my kids are gonna be wearing burnt orange on Friday. I'm gonna be wearing burnt orange on Friday. Like, we're gonna cheer and cheer and cheer. And my oldest is gonna stay up late and get to watch the game. So like, I have to put that through this lens. But like, as somebody whose like job is to like objectively analyze this thing, I've got Ohio State. I think I put 38-31, I think is what I've got for this game. I'm taking the over, but Ohio State covers is what I've got with this, just because I think, again, like I said, when you were talking about like completely stopping the Ohio State offense is not going to happen. They've got too many weapons. They've got too much going on. And I just haven't seen Texas put together a 4-quarter game yet this year. Like, that's just based on what I've seen from them. They have a third quarter slump or an early fourth quarter slump, and that's usually when the problems crop up. So, I've got Ohio State winning this one by a touchdown, but I think it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Gerald, if any Texas fans happen to come on this video and they do not know who you are or where to find you, tell everybody where they can find the Longhorn Republic at.
Yeah, so you can find us on anywhere where you find podcasts. You'll just look up Longhorn Republic. Any social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, either way, it's at Longhorn Pod. So check us out on both of those. Facebook and Instagram, Longhorn Republic, we're there as well. But mostly we're active on Twitter and Blue Sky are like our two big social spots.
There you go. There you go, guys. Thank you so much, my man. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We want to thank Gerald from the Longhorn Republic for joining us. Make sure you go check out their stuff over there, man. Easiest way to find them, go over to thecollegehuddle.com, head on over to the SEC drop-down menu, scroll on down to Texas, hit their page, check out all the links to all their social media, everything that they've got going on over there. Chris, Gerald gave a prediction of 38-31 Ohio State. Are you surprised?
No, I don't think anybody's surprised at this point with the offensive production. He is the first one we've had on who's actually picked against his team.
No, not well in the playoff.
In
Yes,
the playoff, yeah.
not during the regular season.
No.
But
During the playoff, he is the first person to pick against his team.
mm-hmm.
I do believe it's an Ohio State win. I actually think it's going to be a little bit easier than what he's got showing there. I think that Ohio State, if they come out clicking the way they've come out the last 2 games, I think it's a 2-touchdown win. I like Ohio State 35-21.
Chris says 35-21. Chris, I have been mulling over a 14-point win for a while now. I've been feeling really good about that. And for the sake of being a little bit different, here in this case, I like your score, and and let me tell you why I like your score. both teams, and this is something we haven't talked about in this preview at all until this point. Both teams not exactly setting the world on fire in the kicking department.
Right.
However, hats off to Ohio State for kicking 2 field goals last game. It isn't a dome. But I think both coaches are going to be going for it on 4th down a lot. A lot. And I think that bodes well for Ohio State. And so I'm going to say Ohio State 35, Texas 24.
Okay.
So I had a very similar. In fact, I was mulling over 38-24 and 35-21, and I was settling for 35-21. You beat me to it. I'll go 35-24. I'll split the difference. Interesting to note that Gerald, you and I all have Ohio State scoring in the 30s. He has Texas scoring 31. You and I both say they're going to be in the 20s. Are we looking at a very similar thing with Oregon again? Team who scores 30 probably wins this.
I think so. I do. Here's the thing I feel more confident of after seeing this go on the second time versus Oregon with just this offensive dominance that we've seen. I do feel that if it comes down to both teams scoring in the 30s, I think Ohio State's better better. They are better off versus Texas if it turns into a slugfest because of the amount of weapons that Ohio State has. I think it's advantage Ohio State if it does turn into a slugfest like that, or not slugfest, just an offensive outbreak by both teams. But that being said, I don't think that either team gets to 40. I think both these defenses are good enough to keep both teams under 40. I think Ohio State's, honestly, I toyed with not letting Texas out of the teens. I toyed with that for a long time because I'll tell you, I just feel like our defense is that good. And Texas, for all the good things they've done this year, have just not played anybody. And when they do, they tend to have a bad showing. And as we saw Georgia, get beat twice.
There you have it, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. Give us your score prediction. We like to keep track to see if someone can hit the nail on the head with the exact score. That's always a lot of fun. Let us know if there's something about this game we did not touch on that you think is going to be important. We would like to know that as well. Again, just go ahead and leave that in the comment section below.
I've got it here for you, Eric. Prop bet. Travion goes over 100 in this one.
In order for him to do that, he's going to have to hit a couple big ones. Not saying he won't, because the way they just share the load in that backfield, it's so hard for one of them to have enough carries to really to do that. But I'm not.
This is a Texas team that you said it yourself. It's a Texas team that's susceptible to big plays.
Who has the most receiving yards, Jeremiah Smith or the field? I'll give you the field. Can someone outgain Smith in this game?
Yes.
Because
I think it can because they're going to be very focused on Jeremiah Smith. I think Ibuka could have more yards. And hey, watch out. Carnell Tate could be sneaking in there because you've got to if they double team Jeremiah, which they should, that means Ibuka is probably getting one-on-one coverage.
Mm-hmm.
If he starts to go off and they have to do something with him, watch for Carnell Tate to be open a whole lot.
Yeah, one of these, eventually someone's going to basically say, we're not going to let Jeremiah Smith beat us, and that is going to give one of those guys the opportunity to be the hero, play hero.
But I'll tell you, it's so hard to see what's going to happen with Smith. And especially, you look at that Oregon game, they moved him all over the place, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
They even had him in the tight end spot at a couple of times.
Which you're going to have to spy him. You're literally going to say you're going to have to put one of your best defensive backs on him, and you follow him around.
Yeah.
And that's going to create
Gonna create
opportunities
mismatches.
all over the field for other receivers. So, yeah, it's going to be incredibly interesting to watch that chess match. And listen, Coach Sark's no dummy. We watched him absolutely dismantle Ohio State in 2020 when he
Yep.
was the offensive coordinator of Alabama, but he had a lot more pieces to work with there. And I don't think Ohio State defensively was working with a full deck. So we have that. So yeah, but it's going to be interesting nonetheless. It's going to be interesting. Please hit that like button, thumbs up button. We really do appreciate it, guys. Enjoy this game. Don't forget, call-in show tomorrow night, Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern call-in show. We want to hear from you. And then, of course, Friday, the live watch party. We'll be here, and we want you to join us. Turn on ESPN, turn the volume down, mute it. You don't want to listen to Kirk Herbstreit, self-proclaimed Michigan fan, SEC bias fan, although he's trying to back his way out of that now, but whatever. We all know the truth. You want to listen to us and Corey, Dr. Corey, the voice of Ohio State. Any last words, Chris?
No, I'm just ready. I'm ready. Let's do this thing tonight. Right now. Let's do it tonight.
Let's go. Let's go. Be kind to another. I have someone's OH and Carmen High with all your heart. Till next time. OH.
Hi-ho.
Go Bucks.